Skyrim is a game where any number of players could choose any amount of items or weapons to build their own way to play the game. No matter what appears in the game as an item, it can probably help you in some regard, no matter what build you run. Heavy armor, for example, is essential for those who wish to do a two-handed or heavy style build, and arrows, for example, are a critical resource for a player who wishes to attack things with only a bow, right? Well, yes, you'd be correct. But if you limit yourself to a gun, keep the bullets, but attempt to use it without gunpowder, what do you get? A club to beat people with. Welcome back to Challenge Chronicles. Today's episode, Skyrim with only a bow. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, wow, only a bow seems pretty easy. Why don't you just stealth arch the whole game? Well, my loyal watcher, you seem to have missed that little bit in the title. I'm not allowed to use arrows. Throughout this run, I'm only allowed to use the bash attack with a bow. Where did my marbles go, you ask? No, I think they disappeared somewhere in Coles when I saw the price of gluten-free jats, but I'm getting off track. I began this run by waking up after being brutally assaulted by Costco's security. Apparently my membership has expired, god damn it. When making my character, I decided to go with a red guard because they have the power called Adrenaline Rush, which allows him to regenerate stamina super quickly for a short time, once per day. I made my guy look like the black version of the Chad meme as much as I could, and then I was set on the name Bowtie. Why? Because bow ties are cool. Then I was off to be executed. No, I don't want to follow the captain. No, I will simply refuse. Okay, I'm following the captain. Ah, what a beautiful sky. Truly, this game looks good with some mods. Oh my god, what the hell is that? So I ran away from the big stinky and followed Hadvar through the keep. I crouched in the corner and watched as Hadvar desperately fought off the rebels. Damn, he really looks like he needs some help right there. Too bad I can't attack anything. I ran through the keep, ignoring the enemies, and then Hadvar killed this man, who had a longbow. Yes, finally, I had some menial way of which to defend myself. I took on some of the spiders and the bear guarding its exit, and I was tricked into thinking the bow does more damage than it actually does. This is because Hadvar was with me, and he was diddling the bear as well with his mean words. I would find out just how little my only attack does very soon. I escaped Helgen and followed Hadvar to Riverwood. On the way to Riverwood, I took on some wolves, although Hadvar was still with me to help me, so it wasn't that bad. I got to Riverwood, sold all my junk at the shop, and I was off to Whiterun. While walking to Whiterun, I took on a wolf, this time by myself. So I gave him the old 1-2 and... oh my god, that just took half my stamina and did absolutely nothing to that wolf. It was here that I learned I was in some serious trouble. I saw the writing on the wall, so I bolted and managed to get away from the wolves. I got to Whiterun, ravaged the farms for their crops, it's a secret tool that'll help us later, and then I headed up to Dragon's Reach. I told the Jarl about the dragon problem, and he told his wizard friend to tell me to get a pebble from a cave. So I was off to Bleak Falls Burrow. I'm sorry, that was a lie. I actually travelled to Dawnstar. It's time to grind those levels up. When I got to Dawnstar, my second favourite person in the world, the Khajiit merchant, wasn't there, so I had to stand there, waiting for a billion million years for her to turn up. Wait, who's my first favourite, you ask? Well, that would be the guy at Donut King, that always gives me an extra scoop of chocolate in my mocha, even though he's only supposed to put one. What a Chad. Anyway, I spent a long while reaching through the fabric of reality, grabbing all the Khajiit's goods, disenchanted and then re-enchanted them, and then sold them at an escalating price. When I started this endeavor, I was level 1. When I finished, I was level 14. Stonks. I then did something that might be considered irregular or counterproductive. I enchanted all of my iron armor to raise my block skill, so that I could take far less damage while blocking. Stacking it with some necklaces and rings, this enchant made it so I basically took no damage at all while blocking. But why, I hear you ask? Because I need my block skill to be level 50. Why? You'll see, okay? Gosh, so impatient. I took my super OP block build and my enchanted shield that makes it so I never take damage while blocking, and I went up towards Bleak Falls Barrow just a little bit and stood there, taking blow after blow from this wolf for a long time. I even put a rubber band on my controller to hold down the left trigger button so I could play Donkey Kong Bonanza while I waited. And I waited a very long time. I spent almost 40 minutes just holding up my shield to Dark Crypto here in order to level up my block skill. And then, when I was just about to fall asleep, I finally got to level 50 block skill.
Yes! Hell yeah!
I immediately killed the pooch, and then got the Deadly Bash perk, which makes my bashes do 5 times more damage. Yeah, I know, right? Worth it. so worth it. Then, thinking I was ready for Bleak Falls Barrow, I wasn't. I continued on towards the bandit camp, and I really struggled to kill the enemies there. It took a good 10 to 15 minutes to kill them because my stamina bar would run out very quickly and prevent me from doing a bash. Eventually I killed them, ransacked their home, and headed for the burrow. It took me a while and a lot of health potions to kill the bandits outside, and then when I headed inside, the bandit outlaws were even worse. So I dipped for a sec to go back to Dawnstar to grind my enchantments up a little more. I enchanted all my iron armor to raise my heavy armor skill, so the armor rating was a lot better. I then got some trinkets from Solitude to enchant with the same thing to stack the effects. This way, I was at least taking a lot less damage when and if I ever ran out of stamina. And then I travelled to Whiterun to research a crucial recipe, vegetable soup. With 1 cabbage, 1 potato, 1 leek, and 1 tomato, the player is able to create a soup that regenerates 1 stamina per second for 720 seconds. Since a bow bash only needs 1 stamina to do, this means I can just endlessly bash forever. So I made a bunch of vegetable soups with the vegetables I stole from earlier, and I returned to Bleak Falls Burrow. I took on the giant frostbite spider and discovered something neat. The bow stuns your opponent, but only for a short time. If you spam the bow bash, then you won't continuously stun them because they get invincibility frames from being stunned. But if you time your bash precisely when their animation finishes, you can lock them in a stun loop seemingly forever, or at least as long as you can keep the rhythm up. So I locked the spider in a continuous stun so it couldn't escape my wrath, and it fell before me. I then did the same for Arvel the Swift and retrieved the golden claw. The rest of the burrow was a breeze pretty much. I led most of the Draugr to their demise, and then I took on the Draugr White Lord. I downed some vegetable soup and then I tapped him gently from my bow over and over and over again until his brain turned into Campbell's chunky tomato soup. I took the enchanted pebble, whatever I was here for, and then went back to Whiterun. I gave the pebble back to the wizard man, and it was time to take on a dragon at the Western Watchtower. I ran down there, and after I got my torso turned into a chew toy, I took a deep breath and regained my cool. The dragon fell before me within a couple minutes of me smacking it with my bow, and then the Greybeards had summoned me. Before I answered them, however, I stole more cabbages and created more vegetable soup to consume at a later date. I went up to Dragon's Reach and talked to the Jarl, and he started prattling on about the 7,000 steps or something. I left because I was bored. Then I purchased a horse and I was off to High Hrothgar. I went the long way around the mountain this time. Totally my choice, definitely not me forgetting where I was going and getting lost. No, that would just be silly. I made it to Ivarstead, eventually, and then I ran up the 7 billion something steps, and I ran straight past the Ice Troll, cause fuck that, and then I made it to the castle on top of the mountain. The Greybeards gave me the power to do nothing because I can't attack with anything but my bow, and then they told me to retrieve the Air-Haunted Wisdom or something from a tune up near Morthal. I briefly stopped by Whiterun, and then What? Oh my god, are you still talking about the Greybeards? It's been literal days. Anyway, I went to Ustengrav and almost died taking on the cultists out front. I then proceeded to actually die taking on the cultists inside. I eventually gave up trying to kill the cultists and just ran through the dungeon like a 10-year-old diabetic kid with a Kit Kat. I picked up the Become Ethanol Shout, and then I struggled a bit doing the Whirlwind Sprint puzzle, and then I found a note from the person who stole the Air-Haunted Wisdom. I met Delphine in Riverwood, and she told me to meet her in Kynesgrove to kill a dragon. In Kynesgrove, I downed some veggie soup and beat the living snot out of a dragon. It took me a good few minutes, but the dragon eventually fell before me without many problems. Before I talked to Delphine again, I briefly stopped at High Hrothgar to return Air-Haunted Wisdom because I realised I never actually returned it. It was then time to infiltrate the Thalmor Embassy. I met Malborn in Solitude and gave him all of my clothes. I was shipped off to the embassy, and now it was time to party with some cool dudes. And by party, I mean die. And by cool dudes, I mean Thalmor goons. The Thalmor in this torture chamber were quite difficult to deal with. When I down some soup, I'm able to take one person out, no problem. It just takes a while. 2 people is still okay, but I need to be careful. 3 people is quite difficult to deal with. And in this torture chamber, I was dealing with like 7. I died over and over and over again to these dudes. I kept getting fucked over by shitty quick saves and diddled by the prospect of not knowing how to escape Epstein's kitty dungeon. I even tried funneling them into one corner of the room and taking them on one by one, but the assholes had flames, damn it. I also ran out of healing potions at some point, so I had to rely on my magicka to heal, which was being zapped away by the wizard man. I was then forced to do something that some of you may view as cheating. I saw no end to the torment, no survivability. So I eventually put the difficulty down to novice just for this fight. I'm sorry, adept elitists, but it was the only way. Even on novice, the guards still took a good few tries before they fell. Then I put the difficulty back up to adept and I bolted out of there. I met Delphine back in Riverwood and she told me that it's time to save an old man from a rat-infested sewer. So I was off to Riften. I ran through the Ratway, ignoring all the enemies, and then took on some more Thalmor goons. These guys weren't too difficult, just time consuming. I saved Esbern and told him to follow me. I almost got game ended by this wizard man, but I survived. I bonked to the other Thalmor and then travelled back to Riverwood. Delphine and Esbern had a get together, and then Esbern told me that it was time to head over to Skyhaven Temple. So I spent some time gathering some supplies, and I set off for Calfspire. I travelled to Markarth and then proceeded along the road. I was diddled slightly by a frost dragon that wanted to play, and I waited for Esbern and Delphine to take out the force one while I dodged ice spikes like a true Neo in the Matrix. I sped ran through all the stupid puzzles, and then I cut my hand because I hate myself. I almost fell asleep waiting for Esbern to shut up, and then I found some blades armor. I enchanted them all with my heavy armor enchants, and I got the well fitted perk, which gives me a 25% bonus to armor rating if I'm only wearing all heavy armor. So my armor rating was now 220. What? So my computer turned off. It turns out that the local council just so happened to be doing work on the power lines at that exact moment, and all that progress and footage was completely lost.
What? No, alright. I know that sounds bad.
So I had to do all of that Calfspire and Skyhaven Temple all over again. After I redid all that crap, I headed back over to High Hrothgar to ask about the Dragonrend shout. It was time to meet Parthenax. I was given the Clear Skies shout, and I headed up the mountain, ignoring all the enemies in my way. I met Parthenax, and he told me to find an Elder Scroll, so I headed to the College of Winterhold. I impressed the hostess chick by turning invisible, and I talked to Urag about the Elder Scrolls. He told me to visit the Insane Man in the Igloo, and the Insane Man in the Igloo gave me a Rubik's Cube and told me to go to Alfdand. But this time, I'm prepared. I had around 30-something vegetable soups now, enough to set me up for the rest of the game. Even so, the cat on fentanyl still took a lot more time to kill than I would have liked. The rest of the dwarven droids pissed me off, so I ran past all of them, used the Become Abnormal shout to plummet down to my doom, and ran past all the Thalmor into Jellyfish Land. I chugged stamina potions to run away from the dwarven centurions following me, and then I finally got to the Tower of Emzark. I took the scroll and I was finally done with this section of the game. If my power goes off again, I swear to God. I took the Stick of Truth to the Time Wound on Mount Chiliad and time traveled back to when Vine compilations were funny. Oh, wait, no, sorry, this is just the first banishment of Alduin. My bad. The Helmic regulator must be playing up again. I learned the Dragonrend shout, and I was pulled forcefully from my VR chat session by Alduin. This part was time consuming. It wasn't difficult, not one bit actually, just time consuming. I downed a bowl of soup and endlessly spammed the bash button, which put Alduin in a stun lock. I would occasionally have to use the Dragonrend shout to make sure he wouldn't fly away, but other than that, I was essentially glued to the right mouse button. After what felt like enough time for Bethesda to fully release Elder Scrolls 6, Alduin finally ran away to Sovngarde. Now, if you thought that the Thalmor Embassy part and the Alfdand part of this game looked boring, then you ain't seen nothing yet, girl. It's time to hold a peace summit so I can convince the Jarl of Whiterun to trap a dragon in his palace. I went to the Jarl of Whiterun, and he told me to go to Solitude and Windhelm to convince Tullius and Ulfric, respectively, to come to the peace meeting at High Hrothgar, so the Jarl will agree to let me trap a dragon in his palace. Oh my god, fuck. I went over to Solitude and talked to Tullius, convinced him to come to the gaming sesh, and then did the same all the way over at Windhelm. I ran back to High Hrothgar and sat there playing DK Bonanza while the children squabbled. The peace summit is over, thank god, and peace is achieved, kind of. I learned the shout to summon a dragon, and headed to Dragon's Reach to reach for a dragon. Get it? I summoned Udaving and rode him to Skuldafn. Once again, the usage of the Become Nonsensical shout proved very useful in getting me through the tomb mostly unscathed. I ignored all of the Draga while doing this puzzle, except for this one dude that followed me all the way to the boss Draga. I had to kill him because more than one enemy at a time is scary. I took the Diamond Claw, got through the door, and jumped into Sovngarde. I ran past all the dead soldiers on my way to the Hall of Valor, and I had a smidgen of trouble trying to deal with Sun because of a dastardly maneuver no one else has done yet. He moved out of the way? What sorcery is this? Anyway, I got him low after a few minutes and he let me in. I found the 3 Nord heroes and convinced them to beat the snot out of Alduin one final time. We cleared the mist with our strong independent voices, and out came Alduin. I did what I did before, and that is to spam the bash button with a soup in hand and press the Dragon Ren button every now and then. I also have to move around a bunch to make sure the falling rocks from the sky don't puncture my cranium. I bashed Alduin until his vision went white, and eventually, I killed him with my bow. Sun came up to me, shouted me back into the mortal plane, and I had a little photo shoot on top of the throne of the world. And that's it. That's a wrap. I just completed Skyrim with only a bow. Thank you guys so much for making it to the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and hit that like button. Alternatively, if you hated it, go ahead and hit that dislike button, and feel free to go down to the comments and tell me all the other ways I'm a total fuckhead. If you like this kind of content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I do it a ton, and you can always unsubscribe later. Anyway, that's all from me. Thanks for watching Challenge Chronicles, and I'm out of here.